In Inquiry 9.2, we're going to be tracking sunspots. So our question is, what do patterns in the location of sunspots reveal about the sun? For our hypothesis, if the location of sunspots change over time, then it reveals that the sun blank. So you need to think about what it reveals about what the sun does. Think about movements of the sun. Does the sun move at all? Now, we've already talked about how it pretty much is the center of our solar system and that the planets move around the sun, but think about the possibility. Does the sun rotate on its axis? Well, we're going to prove that in this lab today. So our materials for this lab are found in our book on page 137, and the procedures are found on page 142 to 143. Now, to collect your data, you're going to have to look at a sunspot image. So if you'll go back to the instructional page, you see 2 copies of the sunspot data. Here we have sunspots on day 1, the same view of the sun on day 2, the same view of the sun on day 3, and the same view of the sun on day 4. Well, we're going to take the clusters of sunspots that you see and divide them up into 3 groups. The ones that are located up here closer to the top of the sun, we're going to call them group A. And you can see that group A moves from here to here to here to here as you go across the 4 days. Then we also have group B. Group B is the group that starts kind of in the middle here. Okay, group B moves from here to here to here to here during the 4-day period. Okay, and then we have sunspot group C. It moves from here to here to here to here. So what you need to do is use this data to plot your sunspots on your data on your lab report. So on this, you will take what you saw from the pictures and estimate where you saw where the sunspots were for each group. And you're going to be using the drawing tool. So please choose a different color for each one. If you look back at the picture, Group A was purple, Group B was green, Group C was yellow. So you can stick to those colors. Okay, I'm going to show you an example of what your data should look like. Here is the data that I collected. Now, I didn't have a yellow marker, so I had to use red, but I used purple for A, green for B, and instead of yellow, I used red for Group C. And when you plot it on this style of a globe where you have all of your days in a row, here's day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, you kind of see a pattern there. So look at the pattern that Group A follows, look at the pattern that Group B follows, and look at the pattern that Group C follows. And you can see that over time it appears that the Earth is actually rotating on an axis. Okay, so the Earth is, the sun, I said the Earth, the sun is actually rotating on its axis. We can see that from our data because each day you can see that the sunspots are in a little bit different area. Now you've got to think about the sun. It is a big ball of gas. It is not any solid material like the Earth is. It's a big ball of gases. But still, those gases can circulate. They can rotate. So even though the sun is pretty much in the same spot in the center of our solar system, those gases on the sun or in the sun do rotate around, and you can see that. And it looks pretty much like they're rotating fairly slowly, but they are rotating. We do see evidence of rotation there. Okay, so you will use data from those pictures and from this data that I took when I looked at those pictures. You can use those as examples to fill out your lab report. Now, for the next part of the lab report, we have some more data. I want you to pick one sunspot group. You can either choose sunspot group A, or sunspot group B, or sunspot group C. Just choose any one of those three, and you're going to use that globe that you just made with the sunspots tracked on it. You're going to find the latitude and longitude of the sunspots. So just like on a coordinate plane in math class, right here at 0, that's kind of the starting point. So you would look at each of your A spots and you would find out what longitude they are. Like if they were along this line right here, we would say they were on 15 degrees. If it was meeting the latitude line 15, it would be where 15 and 15 meet. Or maybe it's between 15 and 30. So if it was about halfway between 15 and 30, it would be about, what would that be, about 22? So somewhere around like 22 would be if it's halfway. Here you have the 30 longitude line, the 45 longitude line, the 60 longitude line, and then the latitude lines are the ones running from east to west, or I'm sorry, west to east. I said that backwards. So here you have 15 degrees, here you have the 30-degree line, the 45-degree line, the 60-degree line, and so forth. And you also have the ones below the equator of the, I guess what you could call the equator of the sun. You have negative 15, negative 30, negative 45, negative 60. And if you go back this direction, you have negative 15, negative 30, negative 45, and negative 60. So you can use those grid lines to show the latitude and longitude of whichever group you chose. If you chose group A, group B, or group C, any one of them, it doesn't matter. Just choose one group, put the letter here, and then for day 1, look at the longitude and latitude. For day 2, look at your globe for the longitude and latitude. For day 3, look at your sun globe for latitude and longitude, and day 4 also. Okay, then you have your analysis questions that you will answer based on your observations that you made of the sunspots. On number 3, pay close attention. You have to open your textbook and read Galileo's discoveries on page 148 to 151. Okay. And then number 4, ask you to draw where you think a rotational axis would be. So an imaginary line that would run through the sun. So imagine where you think that axis would be and just draw a line up there on the globe. Okay, then you have a few vocabulary words, latitude, longitude, and rotational axis that you will look up in the glossary in the back of your book. And then you have your conclusion, which, as always, for every lab report, we write a summary of what we learned. And in this case, you will write a paragraph that is describing how we discovered that the sun has a rotational axis. So make sure you write a good paragraph, maybe around 5 sentences long, that summarize what you learned about the sun and the sunspots in this lab.